I didn't click the go live button. Right, okay. Oh, I'm such an idiot.
I'm sorry, I was meant to check that.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. We are finally live. Um,
Only half an hour late.
we're about half an hour late. Yeah, I slept in. And then I forgot to hit the go live button. So, on like Twitch, you just like hit start streaming and it starts streaming. But on YouTube, you gotta hit the go live button. So, um, yeah. Anyway, we finally getting some results in. Looks like the primary vote nationwide is looking to be pretty equal. And I don't know if we're getting a particular big swing towards the Greens or anything at this moment yet. Um,
Yeah, we won't really know for like another half an hour.
you know what? I feel like it's stupid having this like thing sitting in the top right hand corner, so I'm just gonna get rid of it, and I'm gonna make it just a total new slide for it. So that would make a bit more sense, I think. So um, we'll just have the ABC as a big thing. Oh wait, no, I'll make a whole new scene for it.
So while you do that, let's chat a bit about predictions since we can still make them because the results haven't started really coming yet.
Yep.
I'm still pretty confident that Labor's got themselves a majority going into this election.
Yep. I
Like
think they have. Yep. Yep. I agree.
I know there's a lot of talk about minority, but I still think they're going to hold on.
Yeah, I think probably Labour will have about 51 seats or something like that, which is very much a majority government. Um, so,
Testing, testing.
hello Heath, welcome.
I,
Um, yeah, so like there was some worries with this election that Labour would end up with minority government, but the polls are not really indicating that that's going to be the case at this point in time.
The other thing that's making me think that Labor's going to do well tonight is I remember. Do you remember the 2018 election at all?
No, I don't think I really paid attention to that one, but go on.
yeah, I
Well,
remember that one where the Labor came through on a thumping majority with Andrews.
yeah, but going into that election, I remember everyone talking about how close it was going to be. Like, I remember the Victorian Liberals really thinking they were going to win that election. Like, everyone's like, oh, Labor's wasting all the money with the Sky Rail and the suburban loop. And they're like, everyone was bashing Labor for just making ridiculous promises. And then Labor proceeded to just absolutely swamp the coalition. Like, no one was expecting such a resounding win. And a part of me is wondering if that's going to happen tonight as well. Like, again, we're all thinking, oh, Labor's got low popular, and then suddenly they just smash ahead again. I'm just thinking there's a good chance there because a lot of young people don't respond to polls and such.
Yeah. So you think that possibly Labour could just have as big of a majority as they got last time?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do think there's a good chance. Now, of course, I have to admit I am a member of the Labour Party, so I am obviously biased towards them.
Yeah, but I feel like you're sort of like um realistic about the situation. You know, if
Yeah,
if you thought that Daniel Andrews was in
As am
trouble, you'd
I. I'm
probably say
also
it.
a Labor Party member.
I'm not actually a Labour Party member, but like I did campaign for them in the federal election, so
yeah, we got a real diverse
yeah.
community, don't we?
I know. Well, I mean, we're all young people, so what do you expect? We're all gonna be like probably on the
I was
left.
actually quite surprised. I was actually quite surprised that Eli, Zero Peach, Aussies elect, whatever they call themselves, was campaigning for the Labor Party because traditionally I've known them to have liberal democratic views or be connected to one of those small fringe parties that have one or two seats in the Senate.
Oh, well,
That's not the
I
case.
just hung around the state branch of the Liberal Democrats. Not that I really support their policies or anything. I just like to hang around them because I enjoy their company basically. Yeah, I don't.
It sounds a little bit like I know some people that are religious and attend church not because they believe in God, but because they like the social company and the people that at the
Yeah,
church
that's pretty much
services.
how it is with my relationship with Liberal Democrats. Yeah, yeah.
I just
Um,
I just can't stand libertarians.
I mean, I sort of can't stand. I wouldn't be able to stand libertarians if they actually had like a majority in parliament, but they like they just like a fringe party, so they're just kind of like an oddity at this point. So
I guess I just run into them a lot online, and a lot of the debates are often boiled down to: is it big government or small government? If it's big government, bad. I'm like, you haven't looked at the policy on its merits. You've just instantly jumped to a ideological conclusion, and it's just I just have a lot of trouble talking to people that only see politics through big government, small government, and can't look at the more nuance. That's my biggest issue.
right, so I'm just having a look at the ABC website, and they've called like 3 seats for others. But I don't know which seats they're talking about. Like, are they talking about like Footscray for the Green? Well, no, because that one's actually pretty close. Are they talking about I don't know what seat they're even talking about.
Yeah,
So,
nothing here is called, or like nothing here is predicted or likely.
well, yeah, like it has 3 up here. So I don't know, like changing
That's called
seats,
three for
seats
the
in and
others,
out.
which is unusual.
Oh, okay. No, they've called three on the live stream for the Liberal National Party. Maybe those others are meant to be Liberal seats.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. I feel like it's all like glitched out because it's all like early days or something. Like I don't know. So I think it's not really the time to to think about you know um like who's winning what seat or whatever because it's just too early basically in the. I'll be right back. I'm
Well,
just gonna get a drink. All right, I'll be
from
right
what
back.
I can see on the last page, it says that the Nationals have won 3, so they're the 3 that they said they've called.
You mean the Liberals?
Oh, it says
No,
Nationals.
nationals.
It's
Because
3.
so we need to understand is the countryside has a lot of little towns with small polling booths, and so the polling booths there they only have less than 100 votes, so they can quickly count through them all and report a result. So that's why what you initially see is a lot of real strong national votes, and then once the larger city booths come through, which will start getting in about half an hour to an hour, that's when we'll start to really see where this election is going.
It certainly does sound interesting, and my predictions, which I forgot to mention earlier, is I think Labor will probably return, but with a smaller majority than what it was elected with. Again, one hand, I think that some of the Daniel Andrews lockdowns, I think some people I know from Victorian Melbourne, even a few that have actually come to Adelaide, and that after that situation finished, haven't forgiven Daniel Andrews. So I think that might erode some of his ability. Then I also think what will keep him in is quite a lot of the promises and the idea that Dan gets things done, which he did get a lot done during his 4-year term, and he's got a lot of things in progress at the moment and a lot planned. So I think that'll what save his bacon, so to speak. So I predict Labor will return, but with a reduced majority and also probably a bit of an uptick in the Greens vote, given the fact that Victoria is quite woke, for lack of a better word. And they have quite a strong Greens following, and the Greens did see an uptick at the last federal election. So if we're going by that, I do think a couple more seats for Greens.
I would have always
Hello.
advised being careful to lump state politics and federal politics together because they're not always the same. You were saying something, Eli?
Oh no, just the first results for Albert Park are coming in. And I think Labor's getting a swing to. I mean, Greens are getting a swing towards them. That's one seat that they were not really tipped to win, but one seat they were looking at as something as an option for them.
Now, how well's Kim Jong Un going in?
Mm.
What's Albanese's seat again? That's Mulgrave.
Albanese's seat.
I mean, sorry, Daniel Andrews' seat. What am I saying?
Yeah, Mulgrave. Yeah. I'm just checking if there's any results. No, there's like no results there at the moment.
There's a lot of people in this seat. Jeez.
Oh yeah, so Albert Park, the Greens are actually ahead on the two-party preferred. Oh shit, I really should I've got like too many windows open. On my on Richmond, the Greens are like massively ahead. Look at that, like 66.8. That's one of the seats that they currently don't have, but they're
What
looking.
seat is this one?
Richmond.
Oh, yeah.
If you're looking at the ABC live stream.
Yes, ALP versus Greens.
Mm. Mm. Massive swing to the Greens.
Yes,
This could
certainly is
be-
very interesting, as I said, because given the fact that Melbourne is, does have such a strong Green and inner city Melbourne, like all your Fitzroy and all that, has such a strong
Yeah.
scene
Well,
power base, so to speak.
they already have 3 seats. There's 2 seats where they're looking to that most people are saying they're going to get, which is like Richmond and there was another one. Um, and they could get even more, um, depending on how much they're eating into Daniel Andrews'
I'm,
vote.
I'm I'm thinking a bit about this because did you remember the Queensland election in 2020?
Yeah.
Because the Liberals promoted a put Labor last policy there,
Yep.
which they preferenced the Greens ahead of Labor. And that was successful in knocking out the deputy Labor leader in, I think it was South Brisbane was the seat. So the Greens managed to win there partly because the Liberals preferenced them above Labor. So it is an effective strategy. Like when the Liberals do push these put Labor last policies, it does result in the Greens doing a lot better.
Hmm.
I I don't think it's a really smart strategy by the Liberals because it just puts in a party that's more ideologically
Yeah.
opposed to them. But
Yeah. Well, maybe they
well,
think it's good for the government. It destabilizes the government or something.
that's what I'm thinking because I think there are two governments that the Liberals really liked, and that was Gillard's government, and I forget the name of whatever the Tasmanian government was. And so with both those governments, Labor was in an alliance with the Greens, and
Yep.
it made them super unpopular,
Yeah.
and that's what allowed uh, the coalitions to pick up huge wins in obviously 2013 and I think 2014 in Tasmania.
Hmm.
So it obviously works, but it's a very cynical way of doing politics.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Um.
it's
If I
very
if I saw Labor like preferencing one nation to try and make the Liberal Party more extremely right to make them more unelectable, I would not approve.
Mhm.
it certainly is very iffy. But I just having a casual read through any comments on any Murdoch papers, such as the Advertiser, and that you can see a lot of people just do not like the Greens. They just have an absolute hatred for the Greens, and like just do not want them in power, do not want them having any seats, having any influence, do not like their policies, their politicians, and that. So in a way, like when Labor and the Greens team up, that gives a huge free kick to the Liberals because a lot of people like. And you can even see by the election results, like only like what is it, like 1 in 10 people vote for the Greens generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually. I had to check what the previous results were for the Greens at the 2018 Victorian election.
Oh, what was I gonna say? Yeah. So basically, the ABC website is just completely like useless at the moment. Like, there's like no results on there. At this moment. Um. It's
The
like.
Greens got 10. Yeah, you're right. The Greens got 10% last time.
Yeah, that's correct. I think the most the Greens have had, as I did recall down in one of the Tasmanian elections, which was more purely um, when the Greens were running on more of an environmental campaign, given the strong history of environmentalism down there. They ended up getting 20% of the primary vote, but that was with the Hare-Clark voting system, so it wasn't, which is quite unusual. Tasmania being one of the only state with a lower house that is elected by proportional
Well,
representation. Unlike
I can't speak for Tasmania, but the Greens' best showing politically is currently the 2020 ACT election, where they won, I think, close to a quarter of the seats. Maybe not that many, but like they got 6 out of 25 seats with 13.5%. So 13.5 is usually the highest. I haven't yet seen. I don't think they've got over 15 anywhere.
Yeah, it is. I do remember reading somewhere like Tasmania. 'Cause the interesting part about the Greens is that there tends to be. I remember a couple of years ago there was quite a big shenanigan, particularly in New South Wales, about the split between the city socialists and the regional environmentalists in the Greens, and there was a whole big shit fight, for lack of a better word. Between you have the older traditional environmentalists like Save the Whales type Greens, and then you have younger in your inner city type Greens, like but are more concerned about social justice issues and whatnot. And then the split was happening between them. So, and I think perhaps I did read something why the Tasmanian Greens did do so well at one point in time about 10, 15 years ago. It's because they were campaigning more on environmental concerns as opposed to social justice issues, which is what other states Greens often tend to campaign on.
No, you actually are correct. They got 21.61% in 2010 in Tasmania. That is a huge number. I don't think I've ever seen Greens that high before. But obviously, since 2014, they've crashed and they've now only got 10% at the last. Actually, that was the last one, was 2021. Okay, they're at 12.3. So yeah, obviously they do a little bit better in Tasmania than I thought. Interesting.
Yes, apparently it's because we learned in one of our politics lecturers said it's because Tasmania has quite a strong history of environmentalism. Just look at the Franklin Dam saga under the Hawke government, but also the Greens policies reflect that. But as we know, on the mainland, the Greens tend to be focused on social justice issues, and quite the left wing in their approach to those issues, which does not sit well with everybody. Um, so hence like their lower performance on the mainland. One reason why.
Hastings. That's a seat that an independent was looking at.
I was really hoping for William the Conqueror to win there, but okay.
William the Conqueror.
Okay, I just got some results here on the official page I'm looking at. They've given with 2% counted updated 2 minutes ago. You've got the ALP on 3, Liberals on 1, and other on 5.
Is this on the ABC website or is this somewhere else?
ABC website. Just
Oh
ABC.
yeah. Labor
So
3.
we got
Liberal
we got a few results now. So Lowen, which I don't know where that is expected to be a Nationals retain.
Mhm.
I think that's the only one that's currently showing up as a call.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's a pretty safe National, so I'm going to have a look more detail at it. Where is Lowen? Oh, okay, so it's basically the westernmost region that borders South Australia. So Lowen contains places like Statwell, I can't even pronounce that. It's plain Horsham, Hamilton, Caniva, basically all those places. So yeah, it's probably going to be Nationals retain, which is no surprise.
Anthony Green's looking at some independent seats. Independents ahead on two-party vote in Hawthorn. In Kew, independents on 25%. I don't know if that'll be enough. Oh, yeah, the Greens might feed towards the independent and then get them ahead of Labor. And then,
By the way, do we know any seats where Teal independents are running against Labor? Because it seems like they're mostly an anti-Liberal force.
there are some seats where they are running against Labor. Let me take a look. Actually, there is at least one. The seat. Oh, Hawthorn is one, literally. And Caulfield, I believe Caulfield is also one. Both of those are Labor seats. So I don't know what's going on in Caulfield at the moment. I haven't checked that one. There's no count on that one at the moment for whatever reason. So
I don't think Hawthorn's going to get called tonight just because it's too much of a three-way contest.
right, okay, yeah.
Because remember, Brisbane wasn't called for ages in the federal election. I think we should see the numbers coming in pretty quickly. So be expecting some big changes in the next 10 to 20 minutes.
Almost reminds me of the 2019 federal election. After 2019 federal election, it reminds me. I remember when there was pretty much no action for the first little bit, and then there was just a huge, big lot of information coming in, and it was all like liberal seats, and then all of the talking heads on the ABC election coverage I was watching were saying, it's probably just like, it's just like the other seats will end up swinging back to Labor later on, it's a computer glitch, etc., etc. And it's almost like the Brexit, when I remember watching the Brexit count again, no action for a little bit, and then there's a huge flood of pro-exit results just coming in, and the TV host just not believing it and trying to use an explanation to think that maybe things would change in the latter half of the night, but they didn't.
By the way, Heath, did you watch the any of the state elections over the last 4 years?
Yeah, I have kept an eye on a few of them. Like, for example, I found the Northern Territory 2021 quite interesting, being right after the first wave of COVID finished back in like June, July of 2020, and how the people there pretty much was no I found that actually quite interesting. that election because there wasn't really any campaigning over issues or policies, whatever. It's just mainly like David Gunner was saying,
Michael
the
Gunner.
Michael Gunner, sorry, was basically saying, look, just we're in the middle of a pandemic. Don't change the territory government. Just return us to power. And then there wasn't really much coming out of the opposition either.
But that was an interesting election because that one, the country Liberals actually did very well. They went from 2 seats to 6 seats, and they're now basically back to being a decent opposition. And I've actually said, if you're curious, out of any election, I expect the Liberals to win. Actually, it's actually the next Northern Territory election is currently the election I give them the best chance of forming government. But as I say, on that topic, I've basically interestingly, probably since the Victorian election in 2018, I have basically watched every single election since then. Like I've basically I stayed up every night to watch every single election pretty much since 2018. So I've obviously watched every single state and territorial election. Although some are a little bit more boring than others. I remember the Tasmanian one being kind of boring.
I also found the South Australian 2022 election quite interesting as well, and also reading some of the analysis that came out from leading news sources like the Advertiser and the ABC and whatnot about how that election was actually fought more over traditional, infrastructure, social policy, healthcare, education, traditional policy battlegrounds for state elections, even though like COVID, obviously it was Stephen Marshall's first term. His main big thing was COVID, and that election actually wasn't fought over the management of the pandemic and the way out of it. The main things were, ambulance ramping, quite a lot of healthcare thing, the Riverbank Arena, a stock standard state electoral fodder, which is quite interesting. As one, I think it was Mike Smithson from Channel 7 politics reporter said, it was the first Australian election post-COVID was not fought around the management of a pandemic or the way out of a pandemic, but just normal state election fodder.
I have a question. Do you guys think that like the lockdowns, like people actually really care that much? Like 2 years later,
So, controversial opinion. I think Daniel Andrews could have won this election even with the lockdowns, and I think with the fact the lockdowns have been gone for over a year, I really don't think it's as big a deal as people say it is. Like, I think there is a contingent who vehemently hates the lockdowns. But controversial opinion, I don't think a lot of these people actually voted Labor anyway. I think these are mostly coalition or One Nation supporters or even other fringe groups that really hated the lockdowns. And at most, I think they represent about 10% of the community, of which I think that is mostly Liberal voters. So if there is going to be any sort of anger at the lockdowns, I think you're just going to see it be taken out of the Liberal support and then obviously funneled back into them with the two-party preferred. So I don't think we're going to see huge amounts. Obviously, Ralph Abbott for the UAP was the UAP's only win, and that was a Victorian Senate seat. So I guess there is a sizable support, but again, Labor and the Greens clean sweep the Senate along with the House in Victoria. So I just in the federal election,
the Ralph Babbitt winning. Yeah, you're right. There is a sign that there is some anti-lockdown.
And that was on exhaustive preferences as well.
Yeah, I mean, he won that seat fair and square. It's not like they have like cringy group voting.
No, I'm not questioning the results. Okay, just I'll make that clear.
Okay.
And I think I'll just also add that just following on answering Zero Peach's question, is that I think it really depends on who you ask, the resentment for lockdowns and of course where they come from, because we were lucky here in South Australia, for those who are watching from here, we didn't really have big long 100-day, 120-day, whatever, super lockdowns. We only had a couple of quick, short, sharp circuit breaker lockdowns. One was the infamous Pizza Boy in November of 2020, and one was a bit of an out-of-control Delta outbreak in July of 2021. And then there was just the standard restrictions in the March, April, and May of 2020, which we all had all over Australia for the first wave when nobody knew what was going on. We all thought the world was going to end, or Australia would end as we know it. But thankfully that didn't happen. But I think it depends on who you ask, because I know, like, as people who are casual workers who couldn't go to work and earn money, people who are elderly, who are locked in aged care homes and had no visitors, single parents, people who are lonely, had disabilities, couldn't see any friends or whatnot, affected business owners like who were small businesses who were trying to run businesses and couldn't earn any money to pay their rent or whatnot. But then on the other hand, like public servants, people in white collar jobs that could easily work from home. I don't, trying to think. To an extent, uni students again who could work from home. A lot of the white collar professionals who it didn't really affect, or healthy retirees as well who'd normally stay at home and not go out much anyway, wouldn't really care. But then people who did have lives to be affected would care, some more than others, obviously.
So it looks like there at the moment there's about a 5% swing against Labor, like statewide. But it is like gradually narrowing as results are coming in.
Again, because we're getting the country stuff. Although I find it interesting because the country wasn't actually affected much by the lockdowns. It was mostly just Melbourne itself. In fact, Andrew's actually put a lot of policies in place to stop people going out into the country to spread the virus. So I'm interested to see what how the country feels about that. Obviously, not very positive, apparently.
Yes, I remember the Ring of Steel where they literally put up a giant metal fence all the way around Melbourne, and then
I don't think it was actually a physical fence.
Or at least quite strong border. I remember all the images they showed on the news, putting out near the major roadways in and out of Melbourne, metal fences, police checkpoints, whatever. And then
Really?
the idea being so that city people wouldn't leave the city and go and spread the virus in the country. And then I do remember there were mixed feelings to that. There were some country people were happy because they wouldn't get the virus taken to their towns where there's a lot of elderly and retirees living. But then on the end there was I remember some tourism operators that were quite understandably upset because they were losing day trips and regional travel to the regions as well, and it was making business and deliveries and whatnot difficult. You'd have to stop at these checkpoints whenever you went to and from Melbourne, at the boundary between the end of Melbourne and the start of the regions.
I have a question for both of you two, and I have just forgotten what it was. Damn it!
Far Right says, "Hi, does anyone know how to get Channel 7 elections coverage without a VPN?"
Yes. Basically, yes, being the one here who watches Channel 7, especially 7 News with Jane Doyle, you can get free to air coverage. If you're in Victoria, you should be able to get free to air coverage. If you're not in Victoria, then you can go to 7 Plus, which is Channel 7's equivalent of the ABC's iView. It's their
I take it that he's
streaming
not in
service.
Australia. Are you not in Australia, Mr. Far Right? I'm probably going to have to wait a little bit for a response to that question.
Apparently, the 7 Plus, I have heard you can log into that from pretty much anywhere, and then you can just stream the live TV.
By the way, I do remember my question. If you want to hear it,
1 second. 1 second.
So
1 second,
a lot
1
of people mentioned at the 2021 election, the federal election this year, that they were saying that one of the reasons the coalition lost is hatred towards Murdoch. So people not liking Sky News, people not liking the Murdoch tabloids, and basically saying since they didn't like him and he was supporting the coalition, they voted against the coalition. And some people have been mentioning that with this election, with all the Murdoch papers being vehemently anti-Dan Andrews. Do you think anybody with anger at Murdoch, or there's going to be any sort of stuff you Murdoch vote for Labor? Do you think there's going to be any of that this election?
Yeah, definitely, because I think you can thank Kevin Rudd for that in part. Because I do remember Kevin Rudd's ex-Prime Minister's petition that got something like over 100,000 signatures, whatever. I don't remember the exact number. Wanting to launch an investigation into the conduct of the Murdoch media empire in Australia, and I think that did stir up quite a lot of anti-Murdoch sentiment, particularly among people who didn't really read Murdoch papers anyway, or people who were from a place where the Murdoch paper was the only option, here in Adelaide, where the advertisers really the only big thing. So I do think that could flow through because it is pretty obvious their coverage from what bits and pieces I've seen. It's really anti-Dan Andrews.
Have a look at these primary votes, guys, by the way. Labor down 7%, Liberal up 1%, National down 2.5%, Greens up 1.7%, others up 7%. So basically, the others are taking up the Labour Party vote.
It just answered that question from far right, but just posted again, stating that I'm Aussie, but 7 Plus isn't showing the stream. I think what you need to do is just go to the Channel 7 News Melbourne, because each capital city has their own edition of 7 News, which would cover the election, would have their election special. And you found it, which is good anyway. So far right, just go to 7 News Melbourne and on 7 Plus, and you should be able to find their special stream.
So I'm having a little bit of a look at some of the so-called freedom parties. They don't seem to be doing super well. The biggest one I've currently got is the Freedom Party of Victoria, who have 1.6% of the vote. If you combine them with the Shooters and Fishers, which is the second best, the Liberal Democrats are not doing well at all. One Nation, Angry Victorians Party. I think if you add them all up, I don't think you even get 3%, let alone 5%. So it doesn't appear that the Freedom Parties are showing much big results at the moment, which once again is sort of making me confirm that I think it's a very small minority, but a vocal minority who are, still hold the lockdowns deep in their hearts as something to vote Dan Andrews out for.
I also think part of it is we have a look at these minor parties. Traditionally, a lot of them are fought over single issues, and those single issues often only have a very small minority voter base which care that strongly about them to the point where they'd put them as their first preference. Like, for example, the Victorian election 2018, I'm fairly certain, or it might have been the 2014 Victorian election, one of the two. There was a party called Transport Matters, which was really just the taxi drivers and the taxi owners and the taxi operators and the taxi industry wanting to get seats in the Victorian Parliament so that they could oppose the legalisation of Uber or change the conditions which Uber was legalised. And the only people who really voted for that minority party to get them 2 seats, and that was off preferences anyway, was taxi drivers and people that were concerned about that. But most of the general public who don't drive taxis or own taxis or run taxi companies didn't really care. So that's often, I've noticed quite a trend with that, is that those small fringe parties only have a small voter base who really, really, really care about the issue that they're fighting for, to the point where they'll list them as first preference.
I really don't think single issue parties do well at all, because I think generally, I found this myself, when the Animal Justice Party ran in my electorate of Adelaide in 2019, I went to a conference where I actually got to talk to the candidates, and I asked them some economic questions, some pretty important economic questions, and the Animal Justice Party just did not sort of responded with, I'm for animal justice, you know that? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm interested to know about, wages and such. And I think that's a problem where a lot of these one issue parties like the Angry Victorian parties fall down, is they'll say they're anti-lockdown, but then they just won't give any clear answers on other policies. And you're not electing people to do one vote, you're electing them for 4 years to do a whole heap of votes. And I think it hurts single issue parties unless they're, like the Greens, and are able to broaden out into more policies.
Yes, and I think that is true, and that is actually a very good point, because when you're electing a government, for better or for worse, the current system, we're not a direct democracy, we're not Switzerland, we don't go and have referendums on every single issue, whether it be economic, social policies, whatever. We elect representatives. It's like Burkinian democracy, if I remember correctly. We expect, which is what one MP from the ACT Legislative Assembly once said, for better or for worse, we elect representatives to a parliament who then make decisions on our behalf, and obviously they need to be able to make all sorts of decisions, not just about lockdowns or taxi services or whatnot, or single or animal rights or whatever. They need to be able to govern the whole economy, the whole social sphere, and also and look after environmental matters as well, not to mention defence and all of the other things that governments do. And I think part of that was the problem that the Greens were having, is that was when the Greens were having their big shenanigans a few years ago, is they were in transition from being a fringe activist party just concerned about the environment and or social justice issues, trying to be a bigger mainstream party that is eligible to have larger representation in Parliament, and that means being able to have policies that can cover all of those grounds which people care about to make themselves more electable to people who are outside of just those outside of those supporting those fringe issues.
I'll be right back, by the way. I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay. So Labour is ahead in 43 seats, which isn't quite enough for a majority yet, but again, the counting's still out. We've only got 4.2%. But we're sort of starting to get a picture here while they do a quick interview on there. So it is implying there is a big swing against Labour in the first preferences, but only a small swing in the two-party preferred. I still don't think the swing against Labour is 10%, but I could be wrong. Like, obviously, Labour vastly underperformed their polls, first preferences in the federal election. But I'm just a little skeptical. I'm actually going to quickly check to see what the results were from the federal election in Victoria. Do you have anything you want to say, Heath? Why I do a little look up on that?
So I'll just give a quick summary of the 2022 Victoria election results right now on the ABC live results page. We've got 4.2% counted. We've got 68 seats in doubt. The ALP are currently sitting on 10. Liberals are currently sitting on 3. Others are currently sitting on 7. And you need 45 seats to form a majority government. And out of those others, 6 of them are nationals, which is what you were saying earlier, Simon, about the country votes being counted first because they've got small polling booths and they can be counted quickly and easily because of country electorates. Then you've got 1 Greens and you've got 1 independent. So,
by the way, yeah, if you're curious, here's the results in Victoria earlier this year in the federal election. Labor got 32.85%, the Liberals got 33.08%, and the Greens got 13.74%, which somewhat line up. The Liberals are doing worse than their federal counterparts. Labor is doing slightly better, and the Greens are doing slightly worse. So Labor is technically ahead of how they performed federally.
Just a quick technical question, since Sormon's obviously been doing this a lot longer than me. Where's my, you know, on Discord you get when somebody makes a post and a server in or whatever, if the sound isn't muted, it makes that noise.
Yep.
Is that going through the stream?
I haven't checked because I've got the stream on mute, but I'll I don't know, maybe send Zero Peaches a message. We can just test it. Actually, ask the audience. Can you guys hear the bleep noises from Discord, or is?
No, you shouldn't be able to hear that because I got that muted.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you're probably hearing the fucking Facebook because someone keeps on Facebook messaging me. That's probably what it is. And I'm trying to
Facebook.
I'm trying to mute all the tabs for Facebook, but they keep on messaging me.
Open up the volume mixer and turn. Although that
I think it's also my phone is going off as well, in the background. So there's like a couple of things that. Anyway, whatever. It's like a really minute problem. So.
I was more concerned about my coming out of mine because I only heard one. I heard one Eli phone noise. That was the only one with me. I was from coming out of my computer. The servers. I mean, I was hearing and I just wanted to make sure that wasn't ruining the stream.
No. You actually know the person who's messaging me, Heath. I'm not gonna say who it is, but yeah, you know who the person is in person. They keep on messaging me. So, Hastings, this is the seat that it is like a massive swing to an independent, but looks like Labor's going to get a swing towards them.
The Battle of Hastings, are we saying?
That's like a Labor seat on like 0.0% margin, so there's actually a swing towards Labor in that seat, so that's going to be good for the Labor Party.
Who previously held that one?
Let's have a look.
It was Liberals with a margin of 0%.
Nah, it's like, I think it's Labour. Oh wait, Liberal held seat. Yeah, you're right. Liberal held seat made notionally Labour by redistribution. Okay, so Neil Burgess is retiring, so it was a Liberal seat, but only barely. So
obviously, I've been down to Hastings. It's the Stony Point line. It leaves Frankston, goes down through Hastings.
Oh, you've been
Starts
down
sort
there,
of
huh? Okay.
yeah, it's a nice little old train ride. You can go through. It's a very underused area of the metro network, but I wanted to go check it out. It's a nice little place, but obviously, that's the only time I've ever been down to Hastings.
Yes, I will say Melbourne does have a fantastic metro rail network. A lot more lines, and they go to a lot more
What do
places,
you
and they
guys
run
think
a lot
about
more
the
regularly.
suburban rail link?
I really like it. I think the Suburban Rail Link is a great way to take pressure off the core section of the network, and I think it would do a wonders on making, because Melbourne needs to have bigger hubs around the city. I think one of the things like a lot of functional cities like Tokyo and such have is not everything happens in the city center. There are little miniature city centers, and the Suburban Rail Loop is designed to sort of link them all up. And I think that'd be a good way of making places like Box Hill um, a much bigger place that people can go to work, and rather than having to go to Melbourne and overcrowd the CBD. What about you, Heath?
Yes, I'm actually think the suburban rail loop, like while it is going to be very expensive and it is going to take a long time to build and could be disruptive, I do think for thinking long term, like over the next 50, 100 years, it will be really good because one problem with public transport, not just here in Australia but often in a lot of places of the world, is it's very CBD centric. Like it's really good if you want to go from the suburbs to the city, which is great if you're going to an office job in the city or you're going to uni or you're going to a sporting event or cultural activity or whatever. But if you're travelling around the suburbs from suburb to suburb, which is reality is what a lot of trips these days are, like whether it's taking your kids to soccer training in the SUV or going to see friends that live on the other end of a city or whatever. A lot of those trips are best done all going getting groceries at suburban centres and shopping centres and whatnot. A lot of those trips are best done by car purely because the public transport, even here in Adelaide, is just so city centric. So I do think that any project which expands suburb transport as opposed to suburb to city is going to be really good because it will take pressure off not just the core of a suburban
Um,
rail system, but also off the freeways as well in Melbourne, and that encourage people to leave their car at home and use public transport for more trips than just CBD focused trips.
my my only huge issue with the Suburban Rail Loop is I don't know why they're not just re-engaging the original Suburban Rail Loop. So I'm not sure you know this, but there used to be a Suburban Rail Loop like about 100 years ago. These days, the only remnants of it is the Alamein branch line. But a lot of if you look at the map, a lot of the grassy strips still exist where the line used to be. I
Yeah.
don't know why they just don't re-put the line there rather than this expensive underground project.
I remember
Obviously,
someone telling me about that. It's not very extensive. What the I've like looked at it before. It's not terribly extensive. It's not like there's only a couple of little strips. It's nothing amazing really.
you can look on the map. I might be, of course, Google Maps is much easier than just actually going down the ground. But it just feels a bit ridiculous to do the whole thing underground.
I mean, you have
And
to
that's what one
because
thing I
you have to do it underground because there's like all of those places. There's people living there and shit. You know.
Yes, and
Yeah,
that
I
is
feel.
one thing I do have a problem with, like with public transport construction projects. It's not just a problem here in Australia; it's also a problem over in New York and in America and that as well. Like huge construction costs because nobody likes their street being ripped up by a cut and cover tunnel method, and businesses don't like it, residents don't like it, whatever visitors don't like it. So that then means cities often need to do things underground using tunnel boring machines and whatnot, which is incredibly expensive. It's a lot less disruptive, but incredibly expensive. And that's why construction costs are just so high. Like in New York, they reckon it's going to cost, like, I don't know, like 7 billion US dollars or something just to build, like, or 4 billion US, 7 billion Australian, I think is what I last read, just to build a few kilometres of the Second Avenue subway, like just up, 3 stops up in
All
New
right.
York.
So I'm just
And
gonna
that's
quickly I'm gonna show what the old suburban rail loop looks like on Wikipedia. So it's only got like a couple of sections like on the south, like there's this like one that's like an extension of the Alamein line.
Yeah.
Um, there's like the outer circle line and then there's like the inner circle line. So I guess if you reopen that, it would be cool, but like it's just not as like extensive as what the new suburban rail loop is looking
I
like at
get
the
it, but
moment.
I still feel like you could, have bits of it use the old one, and then where it can't use the old one, go underground there and save money. But again, we're not engineers, so we probably shouldn't
Yeah,
comment on what we don't know. By the way, we got some results coming through. I'm going to quickly go through some seats
sure,
that have been called.
sure.
Bendigo East has been called for the ALP to retain.
Mhm.
Bendigo West has also been called for the ALP to retain. Uh, Bandura is ALP retain. Clarinda is ALP retain. Dandenong is ALP retain. Etham, Eureka, or ALP. Evelyn is expected to be Liberal likely. Geelong is the retain. Gippsland East and Gippsland South Nationals retains. Lara is ALP retain. Lowen is Nationals retain. Macedon is ALP retain. Monbulk and Mordialloc Dialogue is ALP retain. Murray Plains is ALP. Nepen is Liberal. Oh, we got a Liberal gain in Nepen
Yep,
from the ALP. So they obviously there's one game for the Liberals.
yep.
Um, Polworth is a Liberal retain. Ringwood is ALP retain. Ripon is Liberal ahead. Roville's Liberal ahead. Those would actually Roville's a Liberal retain if they're doing it. Ripon could be a gain by the Liberals. Shepparton could be a game by the Nationals, but that's only from an independent.
We've got a statewide result here of about 55-45 to the ALP, which is suggesting about a 3% swing to the coalition.
Yeah. Anyway,
Which is
that's
similar
about all
to
the
what
states. Nothing else has been called yet.
which is similar to what I'd predicted. Labor being returned with a reduced majority. And I'll just briefly touch on the last thing about that suburban rail loop thing. Just having a look at this map in front of me, which which I just saw on my notifications thing now. I do think, like as what I said, suburban rail loop is great, but they could have almost used some of it because those few red bits from the original thing, if they'd followed that alignment, they could have like done the same thing, but actually cut quite some of the cost and construction time out of it. There are some segments missing, so yeah, but I'm not an engineer. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, so how you feeling, Mr. Code Word Politics, that you're in one of the seats that's actually changing hands? I don't think there's going to be many of them in this election. I think it's going to be, honestly, I think it's going to be a pretty boring election. I think that we're only going to see a couple of Labor seats switch to the Liberals, maybe some independent gains, maybe some Green gains, but then they'll be in Labor will keep a majority, and then the upper house will always be interesting. I put $5 that the legalized cannabis will win a seat.
Yeah, they've been doing that a bit, haven't they, in a few houses?
What you mean the Labor Party?
No, the legalized cannabis. I think
Oh
they've won
well,
two seats in WA and a seat in New South Wales.
they have a seat in New South Wales. I didn't know that.
Maybe not. I need to double check that.
I mean, they probably will win a seat in New South Wales next election. Let's be honest. But like at the moment, I don't think they have any. But definitely one to keep an eye on.
I think legalized cannabis is quite interesting because you've got the push for legalized cannabis has been growing. Again among both like people who use it medicinally and also like a lot of the young middle class Greens voting base that tend to use it recreationally as well. And I find it quite interesting. Here it's gaining momentum, but then in New Zealand they had a referendum on it at their last election, and it actually narrowly lost. And it was a binding referendum, and it narrowly lost the legalisation of cannabis there.
I do want to mention. Have you guys had a look at Nepean yet? I'm having a bit of a look at Nepean because it's the one that Liberals are currently called to have won.
Right. Is that a Labor seat or a coalition seat?
It's a Liberal seat. It's a Labor seat that the Liberals are looking like they're going to gain.
Yeah.
And interestingly, there is it's small. It's only around about 2 to 5%. But we've got the Freedom Party of Victoria at 2.8%, Family First at 1.7%. So together, those I think are two reasonably right-wing parties. That's about a 3% swing. The Liberals have actually lost votes they've lost about 1%, but it's possible that those Freedom parties have actually possibly got Liberals across here, although I'm still a little confused where all the votes are going here. Again, there's a lot of candidates in these seats.
Well, this is a massive swing towards the Liberal Party. It's like 8% swing. So I don't think they
which is a
really
bit
maybe.
weird because Labor's only gone back 6% in their first preference, and Greens have gone ahead by 2.6%. So you think it'd only be a 4% swing, but obviously parties like the Animal Justice Champions and Pets Party must be obviously preferencing the coalition a lot more strongly than expected. I genuinely thought Animal Justice voters would tend to preference Labor because it's a bit more of a left wing cause.
Do you know the story about the Companions of Pets Party, Sormon?
I don't know much about them.
They're a right-wing party that's all about preserving like the ability for people to like I don't know like do like horse racing and like
Oh, okay.
it's all about like maintaining current animal rights, not changing it like the Animal Justice Party wants to do, right? They've just got like a misleading name, like that they're a similar party to the Animal Justice, but they're actually the complete opposite.
Interesting. I've obviously never heard of this party before.
Yes, it is certainly actually. I've never heard of this one too, and it is certainly very interesting that you've got people that are wanting to maintain the status quo. You know, human beings being dominant over the animals and continuing to use animals for current uses that we do, which is quite interesting.
So with Ripon, the Labor Party are ahead. There hasn't been it hasn't been called that they won the seat yet, but it looks like there's a 4% swing to the Liberal Party. 51 to 49. So we don't really know what's going to happen here. But again, the Liberals have a bit of a swing against them, but it's like parties like the Shooters Fishers and the Family First Party. I'm surprised how much the Family First Party is actually getting. I didn't know there was that many devout Christian fundamentalists in Victoria. So yeah.
Which party was this one again?
Family First has got like 3.5% in Ripon, sorry.
Family First isn't just a Christian party. They're a mainstream conservative party, I'd say. I'd think of them more as a solid Republican sort of like party. They're like the Liberals, but the Liberals compromise to try and win. Family First sort of tries to stay more true to traditional conservative values. So I wouldn't say they're necessarily just for Christians. There are atheist conservatives or non-religious conservatives that have that same sort of strong family mindset. It should be a man and a woman. They should have children, live together, and that sort of stuff.
Yes, and I also think I read an interesting write-up on the Advertiser about this topic not that long ago. Like where one of the journalists actually went to like do a story on like what type of people support these like Family First and Australian Conservatives and those just type of like right-wing minor family-orientated parties. And a lot of them actually that support that aren't like your stereotypical fundamental Protestant extreme right-wing Christians. They're actually like your just normal suburban, hard-working two-parent families that are living in the mortgage belt, paying off a mortgage. They've got their kids in attending private religious or Christian Catholic schools, both adults working, hard-working, like and then running their kids around to different extracurricular activities outside of school, and that like just typical indebted suburban families that support these instead of like being dominated by like right-wing ultra-conservative Protestants or anything.
Yeah, the Family First Party, its policies are very like economically libertarian. Like they've always been like very small government on their economic policies, and that's sort of like their main thing rather than their religious fundamentalism. Like they're different to like the Christian Democrats, which I think are more like fundamental Christian.
By the way, are you guys watching Hawthorn at the moment on the live stream?
I am watching it. Yep, I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
I'm expecting the Greens are probably going to preference the Teals ahead of Labor, which if they do that, it's pretty clear it's going to be a Teal win in Hawthorn. I think Hawthorn's a lost cause for Labor.
Right. Well, like they're only like 2% behind Labor, so yeah.
But they're going to get a majority of the Greens' preferences.
Right.
I think you'll find the Greens maybe not.
I'll just add in here just a bit of a results summary now on the homepage. We've got ALP on 26, Liberals on 11, Other on 9, 45 to win and 8.5% counted, updated 1 minute ago, and 42 seats in doubt.
Nationals apparently are doing very well out in the country they've got the biggest swing towards them out of the four main parties at the moment, according to the party totals. Interesting. They've sort of been a party I haven't really thought much about because obviously they're just the junior partner of the coalition.
I think it is. I do find that quite interesting. Like just looking at the history about how like the Liberals and Nationals are pretty much in lockstep of each other. Obviously, you know, the Nationals do tend to focus on rural and regional interests, which is like why their voter base out there is so strong. But then also but I do find that quite interesting. There was only one time, just as a side note in history, where the Nationals actually sided with Labor, and that was at the 2002, if I remember correctly, state election here in South Australia, where it was a hung parliament returned, and the National representative for Chathey, which is
I think what happened there is Labor gave the Nationals the Speaker's chair, which gave them the majority. Which is actually what they did in the Senate this year, in the upper house this year as well. Is they gave it to a right wing member. So it wasn't so much that he supported the government as he was in the Speaker's chair, so it wasn't an issue.
So I remember that was a huge, big source of controversy. I remember reading about it, and like some of the National members that were up in the Riverland, which was quite a strong farming-based area, and that they were like really cranky that they were like in bed with Labor and not with their usual coalition partners. So for Nationals, essentially they look like a different, separate party, and they do have slightly separate policies. They're pretty much in lockstep with the Liberals, like, and they always have been, like state and federally.
So, what do you reckon, guys? Do you reckon Dan Andrews, if he ends up winning, he's going to like retire this term, or do you think he'll just continue on to the very next term?
I'm very. Oh, did you want to go first, Heath?
Yeah, what I reckon is, I reckon he'll continue on because he seems pretty passionate about the job. Like, I remember when he got injured in that tragic accident in that holiday home, like, he was still, like, where he could, like, he was still working, like, from home, like, as much as he could. He was giving daily updates on social media. Then as soon as, like, he was cleared to go back to work, he literally went straight back into the job and resumed his old role up. And that, so I reckon he will just continue through to the next election. And I reckon there will either be some scandal, which does often happen in third or fourth terms of governments. There'll be a scandal, and then he'll resign, or he'll just continue on.
A bigger scandal than what's happened over like the whole lockdowns and such.
Possibly, because these things often long term never often end well. So I'm thinking either he will continue, he'll press on, he'll go to the next election and try and seek a fourth term. But then what I think is there could be some big scandal that will plague his government in the later half, which could lead him to resigning, citing exhaustion or family concerns, which is what often politicians do. Cue the stock footage of the politician's wife and kids running over to give them a big hug outside Parliament House after they make their announcement.
I would actually say, because I'm glad you asked this question, Eli, is the fact that generally a leader who doesn't lose an election generally lasts about 10 years. 10 years is roughly the time. And after about 10 years is roughly when the leaders go, you know what, I've left my mark. I've done what I needed to do, and I'm going to step down. Again, I don't know. Andrews is pretty keen on the job. He could run for a fourth term. If you're curious, winning this election will mean that he will become the longest serving Labor leader in Victorian history, which would obviously be a big achievement in outright. But yeah, I do think there's a good chance he can win. Obviously, as Heath said, a scandal could change things. But yeah, I also think it depends. Like, he's also got, like, he never properly recovered from his slip down the stairs. Like, he's frequently said, like, he still has trouble moving around. He's nowhere near as active as he was before the accident. So if that does cause longer term health issues, he could resign, not because of a scandal, but because of health issues. So I would say keep an eye out for him for the next 2 years. If he doesn't resign by the end of 2024, I think we can confidently assume he'll be running for a fourth term.
Yes, and I'll just add on to that about scandals. It's one thing that's important for the audience and everyone to remember is that during a national crisis or emergency, whether it be a COVID pandemic or whatever else it would be, people tend to give the politicians in power quite a wide berth, and they are quite tolerant of mistakes and stuff ups, and things that would normally bring down a government in the good times often fail to have little, if any, effect during the bad times. Like in South Australia, we had the Polly Perks scandal during the first part of the COVID pandemic in early to mid 2020, where there was like politicians rorting the country members allowance. And sure, it was made headlines a few times on 7 News at 6 o'clock with Jane Doyle, but there wasn't any leaders being rolled or people resigning or whatever, or it wasn't a huge big scandal
Ah,
because the focus was on the
now,
pandemic.
oh yeah, sorry. I did want to mention something. We won't be getting any results from Narracon tonight. Did you know about what happened in Narracon?
No.
Yeah, so in Narracon, Nationals candidate Sean Gilchrist tragically passed away I think, a few days ago. Due to the death of a candidate, they can't obviously hold the election because the Nationals need to choose a new candidate. So Narracon will still be voting in the upper house, but their lower house election has been deferred until a later date, so we won't be getting any results. With that being said, it looks like it's probably going to be won by the Liberals, so we can sort of presume that's going to be another seat in
So
their
you don't think the
basket.
Nationals will get some kind of sympathy
What
vote or something like that?
national? I don't. What I mean by that is coalition. So it's going to either be Nationals or Liberals. So
Okay, yeah, we won't
uh,
change the state of the government. Yeah.
it's not going to go to Labor or the Greens. That's the big thing, or Independent.
What I think is also worth adding here is it's always, and I actually find that quite interesting because I remember in the 2018 council elections here in South Australia, in the Adelaide City Council, in one of their wards, we had the disability actor and activist Quentin Kernahan, and that you'd frequently see him rolling around in his wheelchair around Adelaide and on the trains and whatnot. He ended up dying of a asthma attack during the election campaign. But what they actually did is they actually let the election run ahead as normal. They left his name. They left his name on the ballot, and then they just said they had the Electoral Commission of SA said they had contingency plans in place so that during a local council election, if a candidate dies, um, all resigned, changed their mind during the campaign. They just run the elections normal, and then they just reallocate the votes to, I think, whoever next highest ended up. If, like, in case he won, like, it would have been the person that came second would have ended up winning the seat. I'm finding it surprising that Victoria have actually been cancelling this election and this election because of this, but then again, I can understand because of it being a state election and it being quite partisan, unlike South Australian local council elections, which are mainly full of independents. You kind of do need somebody to be alive, so that you can have a clear result.
Let's have a little look what they're saying.
Well, it's
Yeah.
now 8 p.m. in Victoria. And we still don't know the results of the election quite yet. It looks like the Labor Party is heading for a retaining their majority, um, but it may probably end up being about, at this point in time, like early 50 seats. There's only been like about a 3% swing against the Labor Party at the moment on a two-party preferred basis. I just had a look at the upper house to see if there's any results coming in there. There's nothing coming in there at this point. So we're just kind of just waiting on the trickling of lower house seats at the moment to see what's happening. I think Liberals have won 2 seats. Like I think there was like Nepean. They won and they're ahead in like Ripon or something like that. And Anthony Green is talking a little bit about like what's happening with the statewide
Yeah, he's going to look at the
primary vote.
chamber and see where we currently think the chamber's going.
As the $1 million question is has
So Labor needs about
called the
15
election?
more seats to win currently. Okay, will they get?
LP sitting on 30 currently, Liberals on 10, and others on 9 right now.
Hmm. This is why I love Anthony Green so much.
Which is why he well and truly deserved his Order of Australia Medal award, which he won a few years ago because he does such
I
an
am going to be
outstanding
so
job.
sad when he retires.
Yes, I certainly do. Certainly is sad when people who are just really good at their job and who've done it for a really long time retire. Like I was gutted when 7 News reader Jane Doyle announced that she was retiring last week at the end of, coming up at the end of this month, end of next month, she'll be retiring. I was so gutted because she's done it for over 33 years and has done such an outstanding job at it. And I'll feel the same way when
Here's Mulgrave's results.
Are you watching on like the TV as well as the like stream?
Yeah, I'm watching the live stream directly as well.
Oh, okay, right. I see. I think it's a little bit ahead of the live stream or something. Yeah. I reckon Daniel Andrews is going to maintain his seat at this point. Like he's got like a margin of like 17%.
Yeah, he's winning on first preferences alone. So, that Kim Jong Un impersonator doesn't appear to be anywhere close to the top.
Who's the Kim Jong Un impersonator?
I'll bring it up. I forget he's got a name. He's acting like Kim Jong Un, but he's not actually.
Is he the
called Kim Jong.
guy? Is he the guy who stormed? Like he was in the middle of the federal election and he went into
Yeah,
some.
he ran. I think he ran in Kuyong.
Really?
Frydenberg's seat, old seat.
Sorry, I think he mentioned it. I think it's Andrew King.
Andrew King. Oh, okay.
No, it's Howard Lee. Sorry.
Howard
So
Lee.
the-
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes
He's on
sense.
0.2% of the vote.
Oh, what a shame. What a shame. I thought more people would vote for him. I would have voted for him.
The ALP is just rocketing ahead with 35 seats now to Liberal 12 and others 10. So massive. I don't know. It's only early days yet, but this is massive. Judging by the live results.
Code Word Politics says Daniel Andrews is the Victorian Mussolini.
Don't know about that.
Well, I mean, like the lockdowns were pretty extreme. They went on for a very long time, and they were very tight. So,
But
I'm surprised there
remind-
isn't more people like pissed off about it
I
in
remind you-
hindsight. But they must have just thought it was the right thing to do, I guess.
Andrews was polling higher during the Andrews was polling higher during the height of the lockdowns than he is now. So
And there's very good reason for that, as that often is seen in all sorts of economic and health and natural disasters, is that the government or the leader of the day will poll higher, often purely because they're the only people in the parliament that have, like the government and the cabinet of the day, they're the only ones that have access to the bureaucracy, they're the only ones that have access to the levers of power. So as the age-old adage goes, there's no room for the opposition in a crisis. Because all the opposition can just do is stand out front of Parliament House and whinge at the cameras. They can't really do anything. Like they can't control the police or the health officers or the military or the emergency services or whatever. And people don't want to hear like whinging in a crisis, because especially a serious crisis like a pandemic.
That-
All right. Before you continue, before anyone continues, all right. I've noticed that there's a sense of samey opinions in this chat, and what I've had to do to remedy this is add in someone who completely disagrees with the opinions of both of you guys. So,
oh dear.
please welcome to the voice call. His name is Jet Set, and he is actually not in favor of Mr. Daniel Andrews. Welcome to the call, Jet Set.
Hi.
Hi. So
Hello.
we were just talking about
Hello,
the
Jet Set.
lockdowns, and Heath was talking about how it was a very important thing for economics and health, everything. Would you give your opinion on that?
Well, wait. What do you want me to say in particular?
I'll just say what your opinion is of the lockdowns.
You just call us idiots or something. That's it.
Keep it G-rated in case there's kids watching.
Okay, I gotta turn you guys down first. You're very loud on my end. Alright, that's better. That's better. I'm not gonna get my ears blown out. Yeah, I don't know. Lockdown's bad, I guess.
locks down. Okay, so why? So are you surprised that looks like Daniel Andrews isn't taking a massive hit despite his like months and month long lockdown
Oh
policy?
God, no, no! I was fully expecting Andrews to like be very strong in this election. Mainly because the Vic Liberals can't do. Having to keep this tree weighted is hard because I was about to say a naughty word. Vic Liberals are a very bad opposition. So there's a lot of stuff Andrews could do and still get away with just because Vic Libs are such poor opposition. And Andrews himself has a lot of personal popularity. Victoria is a Labour-leaning state, so I'm not overly surprised by what's
So
happening.
why were people so sort of? They seem pretty cordial about like the month long lockdowns. Like why are they not more angry about it?
By the
Honestly, I
way,
think a
they're
lot of
currently
people
carrying
have
Musk
just
for
had.
O'Brien's seat at the moment. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, I gotta be honest. I kind of think COVID has just disappeared from a lot of people's consciousness. Like anecdotally, I barely hear anyone talk about it over here these days. Um, I that's just from my anecdotal experience. I think if this had been earlier in the year, it would be a much more hot button issue. But I don't know. I kind of think it's sort of disappeared, and issues like cost of living, possibly integrity in government, have sort of taken more of a stage.
I disagree a bit with we haven't heard about COVID because I know there was a lot of talk about the recent wave that came through. I mean, I know a few people were talking about that. Although I don't think you might also be right there, though. I think there are the COVID alarmists, the people that keep wearing a mask, get another jab. But I think they're also again just a very loud, vocal minority in the same way that I think a lot of the Freedom Party candidates and supporters are also just a very loud and vocal minority. Sorry,
Uh,
Jet Set.
Well
No, no,
said.
no. You're probably
Well
right
said.
because, in all honesty, those two groups are the only people I really hear COVID talk from these days.
Oh,
Like, I,
actually, I'll
oh,
just
go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I'll just interject and say, well, I think that you pretty much hit the nail on the head there because I've noticed that, even just in and around at uni and my extracurricular activities and whatever, you've got the hypochondriacs that are like, oh, we're going to, COVID's back, we're going to die, we got to mask up, we got to stay home, we want to, then the other end of people are like, oh, it's just a bad flu, the whole thing was just a big overreaction, government needs to keep getting out of their lives. But the vast middle, we could say, call them the quiet Australians, whatever you want to call them, if you want to use some ScoMo talk, they just kind of moved on. They're back doing their normal activities. They're back at work. They're back going out to crowded nightclubs and pubs on a Friday and Saturday night. Back travelling overseas, travelling interstate, just doing all the normal things they did pre-COVID with not really talking about or
But
caring
can I
about it.
quickly interrupt? Just want to say, so we've currently got 3 seats that are basically confirmed to be changing. Bayswater and Hastings look like they've been picked up by the Labor Party, and NEP, obviously NEPEN, as we've talked about, has been picked up by the Liberals. Carry on.
Yes, which certainly does sound interesting. And then we are currently on, I'll just follow on from that, we're on 36 ALP, 12 Liberal, 11 others, 45 to win, 13.2% counted, and 29 seats in doubt. And that's latest information updated 1 minute ago.
By the way, Jet Set, we were just talking about this earlier. Do you think if Dan Andrews wins, do you think he will stay on as leader until 2026, or do you think he will be out before the next election?
My thought for a long time is Andrews will quit ahead of the next election. I think he'll get another term and then sort of groom a successor, and then after at least halfway through,
The
he'll
problem is his
sort of
last
dip out.
successor had to get kicked out because he was corrupt.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. That's my theory originated before he got kicked out, so I don't know if it will come true just because I don't know if they have anyone ready. But who knows what will
Who
happen
was
in
the
next
guy
week.
who got kicked out?
I forget the guy's name, but it was his
Uh,
deputy leader was cause, the thing with Daniel Andrews, and I'll mention this, is he himself has never been indicted for a corruption scandal, but a lot of the people in the upper echelons of his government have. And so that's where I think a lot of the issues around his government are. It's like he might not be corrupt himself, but he surrounds himself with some pretty bad company.
So I do remember the branch stacking scandal at some point as well, and there's some dodgy things going on in the Victorian Labour Party, and I thought that would have been the end of Daniel Andrews, but I think, again, that wasn't, because again, that was during COVID and people were too concerned about lockdowns and whatnot.
And again, it's not Andrews is not the one at fault. Like, if he wasn't the one doing the scandals, it was people around him. Like, the branch stacking thing was basically like a backbencher or some moderate member of the Labour Party was trying to stack the Labour Party so he could assume the leadership. But obviously he failed. So, like, I'm not sure how much that's going to, like, oh, a guy was trying to seize power but failed. How exactly is that supposed to hurt Andrews? But I think other parts, there's a lot of other IBAC investigations that I think have hurt, not so much the branch stacking. I can't remember all of them because obviously I don't follow Victorian politics super closely. You're Victorian yourself, aren't you, Jet Set?
Yeah, I am.
So, do you remember any of this? Can you give me details on what some of the scandals were? I heard there was a few recently.
So I'm trying to think of like the more recent stuff. Just trying to sort of like whack my mind of like what the most recent. I think the most recent sort of like scandal that like hit the news big time was the whole preference allocation thing, which is sort of like only the tip of the iceberg. Like that's a very minor thing, but like that was the most recent thing that came out that sort of got a lot of people's attention.
What's the preference allocation thing?
So one of the minor parties that sort of present, I think this is how it goes. One of the minor parties that presents itself as being anti-Andrews was found to be like funneling preferences back towards Labour somehow. And the guy who leads the Angry Victorians party basically exposed that and said, "Oh, we need to get rid of group voting tickets because dodgy politicians are making deals like this to harvest preferences."
Oh,
Totally
right.
agree.
It was
Group voting
Glenn
tickets suck.
Glenn Drury with the Sack Daniel Andrews Restore Democracy Party.
Yeah, it was that one.
Did you vote for the Sack Dan Andrews Restore Democracy Party, Jet Set?
No, I did not.
But don't you want to sack Dan Andrews and restore democracy?
Yeah, but like I could give my vote to like other people. Like, not fucking wasting my time with that.
All right. Well, yeah. Any thoughts about how things are gonna go tonight? I keep on calling you Jet Set, but I've been calling you Doomer on my other videos. So on.
Yeah, I was a bit thrown when I joined and you called me Jet.
Yeah,
Set.
sorry.
I
I'm
was
I'm like
expecting
I'm
it.
still half asleep. I only
It's
just
fine.
woke up
It's fine.
just before this. So yeah. Any thought about how this is gonna go? Do you think that we're just gonna get another Labour Dan Andrews return government?
Yeah, look, I don't think that result was ever in doubt, unfortunately. I would at least be happy if he has a slightly reduced majority. Like that would be better than nothing, even if it's not enough to kick him into minority status. But yeah, I don't think there's any question that Andrews would be walking out as Premier again.
Right, so we got a question here from the chat. Code Word Politics says, no offense, but does the anti-Andrews guy have a speech impediment?
Yeah, I do. And no offense taken. Make as many jokes about it in chat as you want.
Yeah, he's got a very well-known, lasting for a long time speech impediment that I like to constantly make fun of to his detriment. So
Yeah, you're a real dick sometimes.
I it's just too funny.
What type of speech impediment is it, if I'm allowed to ask, Jet Set?
I think it's a wisp or something.
He can't say R's or L's. He just replaces them with W's.
Which unfortunately sucks when your two main parties are called Labour and Liberal.
Yeah, it's a big problem. Thinking about moving to another country, so I don't have that issue.
Yeah, Democrats and no, you would say
No,
Republicans. So yeah, you still have
you can't go to England because it's Labour and Conservatives.
Well, I'll just go to China. You know, there's only one party. You don't have to fucking
The
worry about
communists.
anything.
Sorry.
Yeah, and there's no R's and L's in the CCP. So
No, there isn't. No.
So yeah,
The English language is certainly can be a very difficult language to master. We've got so many weird and wonderful letters and numbers and ways of pronouncing and saying words and whatnot.
So remind me, so we're calling you Doomer now, are we?
Yeah, you can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me wait to dinner.
May I ask what seat you're in?
I'm in the seat of Thomastown, which is very safe for fucking Weber.
Labour, yeah, I see it
Yeah.
now. So this is in North Melbourne. Okay, so right on the edge of the suburb near Craigieburn.
yeah. Code word politics says I'm a year too young to vote, but I would have voted for the Shooters, Fishers, and Farmers Party because gun rights.
Nice.
I'm not the biggest fan of the Shooters and Fishers, but I do like him over the Nationals. That's partly influenced by Friendly Geordies, I will admit.
Yes, and talking of friendly Geordies, did anyone see how friendly Geordie's got his house firebombed recently?
I think we all saw that.
Yes, it certainly is. Certainly got some enemies out there. But just on the not topic of the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, it was quite interesting watching them at the last New South Wales state election back in 2019, where they actually, because there was so much discontent with the Nationals in some parts of Western New South Wales, the Shooters and Fishers and Farmers went from 0 to 3 lower house seats, just like that.
Unfortunately, they've kind of imploded a bit since then.
And they actually, at one point, once they got those free seats, because those seats were so large in land area, because they were so sparsely populated, they had half of New South Wales by area under their control for a while before they imploded.
So what's the deal now? Have they like split up? Have they all like turned into independent MPs or something?
Sort of. Basically, is it Helen Dalton who was their leader? I think she got kicked out of the party, or she left, and she was sort of the big name in the party. They're also not polished. They didn't do very well in the Super Saturday elections. So yeah, I think unfortunately, probably they might actually lose all their seats back to the Nationals come the
That's very
next
unfortunate.
election.
That sucks. That sucks.
Just thought I'd pop in and say that the ABC is calling Northcote for the Greens.
And that's a Labor. That's a Greens gain for them, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was a suburban seat held by Weber.
Yes, and I'll just touch on the New South Wales situation again very briefly. Is what I find very interesting about their lower house elections is that they use optional preferential voting, which means that you do not have to number every box on your ballot, which means that it can be quite difficult for the Greens and other third parties to come from behind and win seats because you don't have to number all your preferences, but it does significantly reduce, often by up to a factor of half, wasted or informal votes. So that would be something to look out for, how the minor parties fare at the coming up New South Wales state election with optional preferential voting.
I am interested to talk a bit about the New South Wales election and some predictions for that. Although maybe I think that might be something we want to talk a bit later on in the night. Another thing I also want to talk about is where we think the future of Victoria is going to go. If it does turn out to be a decent result for the Liberals maybe gain 2 to 5 seats. Do you think is Michael Daly? Is that who's the leader of the
Matthew Guy.
Matthew Guy? Do you think Matthew Guy will stay on as the Liberal leader going on into the next election?
I think they're in the same boat as Weber in that they don't really have anyone else. Like that's the biggest problem with the two parties in Victoria. They don't really have anyone else to take charge. So I think Guy would honestly just stay out of their default at this point.
I actually have a different opinion. I think Guy will probably end up rolled because he's still the Liberal leader of the opposition down there in Victoria now. This would be the second election that he's come into and lost. And I remember back in 2018, like Matthew Guy, like there was a lot of talk in the media and that about how he just didn't really want the role. He didn't really care. He didn't really campaign that much. He just basically didn't really give a stuff. And there was a bit of a hashtag, put your lobsters out for Guy, because like there's only like one or two big ideas that were like in the media, which was like attracting like investment.
Also, he's getting under 30% of the vote for the Liberal Party, which is pretty pathetic. Like this, like despite against the landslide, he is not really seeing the Liberals regain any votes. They're only getting seats like whatchamacallit, they're only gaining seats like Nepean because of preferences. Like they're not really winning seats due to increasing in their vote. Like yeah, they went backwards in Nepean or whatever you pronounce it.
And you
So I
can
don't
see
really
what
see.
happened with Bill Shorten, like when he took Labor to 2 federal elections and lost, he ended up rolled. And that was quite unusual to federal level. Where I remember I was saying like he was one of the very few federal Labor leaders or leaders to take a party to 2 elections and then, you know, and get rolled. So I think Matthew Garvey will probably be talking in the Liberal Party about, you know, like does he stay on as leader if he's like had 2 lackluster results?
By
No,
the way,
there's no way they would have him.
ABC is just doing a projection.
Yep, yep.
ABC has just predicted that Labor has one re-election in
Yep.
Victoria.
Yep. Not a surprise. I don't think that Matthew Guy will be returned as leader again. I think that's it for him. You know, he's done 2 in a row. He's lost both of them pretty divisively. So
I mean, again, I just don't know who they would replace him with and all. Like, that's my whole hypothesis for him sticking around. And in fairness to him, he has done a much better job than he did in 2018. Now, that's not saying much, admittedly, but still. But yeah, I just don't. There's not really anyone who I'm immediately like seeing as like a good option to replace him, and I think that really speaks to how bad the Vic Libs are at the moment. So yeah, I can't fully say I'm sure what they're gonna do, but I don't know. I can see guys sticking around just because they don't really have much talent, to be honest.
And I also think the Libs are just on the nose around Australia in general. Like you have a look at a lot of the recent state and federal election results. It's Labor retaining power, or the Libs getting turfed out, and Labor gaining power. I think like reading the mood, like I just know just from talking to people on the street, you know, friends and whatnot. The mood is particularly among young people here in Adelaide, anyways, and middle-aged people in Adelaide, anyways, that Liberals tend to be on the nose a bit, both state and federally. So I think that's also part of their poor performance as well. Like just look at their federal results as well, were quite poor as well.
Code Word Politics says Louise Stanley rather, Louise Starley rather, for Liberal leader for Victoria. She does have a good driving record, apparently.
That reminds me of what the Turbo Tom scandal here in SA, like back in the last Labor government, where you ended up with Tom Kutsatonis was the road safety minister, but he was getting speeding fines because he was a little bit too turbo while behind the wheel.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. So I'm just having a look at the results at the moment. I think Labor's on a pretty clear path to majority government. They've got supposedly 41 seats called their way, and they need 4
so
more.
they've got 41 seats called, and they've got the Greens have got 4 seats, and you need 45 for a majority, I believe. So basically, that's why I guess the election has been called for Labor, because the Greens would not side with the coalition, and with them and the Labor Party, they have together a majority. So yeah, Labour Party will probably end up getting a couple more seats. You know, there's still a lot more in play, 23 in doubt. So yeah, Labour Party almost certainly will end up getting majority at this stage.
Yes, it certainly has been a very quick election result to be called, because I remember there was one of them, I think it might have been the Malcolm Turnbull, the 2016 election, where you were literally waiting till like midnight before the results were called. I remember like we were sitting up watching it from 6:30 through to like midnight before it was called. So this was like this was actually like the South Australian state election, which has had the result being called quite quickly and early on in the night.
I don't think we've really had a close election probably since 2019. I think like the 2019 federal election was sort of the last time we had a reasonably close election. Like the most recent elections, this is seeming a bit like the federal election, where it's like we know one of the major parties is not going to come close, but we don't know if the other has got the majority.
I'll just follow on from a question that's been posted in the chat about the Reason Party. which is quite interesting that someone mentioned about them being socialists. Is what I've always found with them is I know they're originally a single issue party dealing with the legalisation of sex work and reforming the sex industry down in Victoria, Fiona Patten. And then they started to branch out, I think partly because they had a bit of a threat at the 2018 Victorian election from the Victorian Socialists, which was a combination of the Socialist Alternative and the Socialist Alliance, so like two lefty fringe groups, and then they merged and they tried to get somebody into the upper house in the Northern Metropolitan region, and then they lost on preferences. And I remember the key competition was the Reason Party by Fiona Patterson. So in order to compete with them, she started expanding from just focusing on sex worker rights and to other left-wing social justice issues like euthanasia and cannabis and whatnot. But economically, you don't really hear. I haven't really heard any of their economic policies. They mainly seem to be focused on left-wing social justice issues because you don't really hear anything environmentally out of them either. So, for Reason Party, they are quite reasonable, I think. Excuse the pun in their social justice policies, anyway.
We are getting some results coming in from the Legislative Council. I'm just going to quickly
Let's
look
have a look.
at them. So we've got the Eastern Victoria region where it looks like One Nation has picked up about 6%, which is pretty good for them. I mean, this is still early days. This is only 1% counted, but yeah. So at the moment, One Nation is looking to win a seat in the upper house. Shooters, Fishers, Farmers also is competitive there. And then I think most of the metropolitan seats are nothing's really happening there. Darren Hinch Justice Party in the Western Victoria region, um, even though he's only got like 1.48% of the vote, like yeah, the minor parties are getting quite a lot. Legalized cannabis,
Greens do
4.42.
appear to be doing quite. Oh, sorry, you're still talking LC, aren't you?
Oh, well, the Greens, I don't know how well they're doing compared to last time. If they're, I mean, they won't really end up doing well in the regional seats. Animal Justice
No,
Party
no,
in the
they definitely
Northern
won't.
Victoria region. Yeah, go on. Sorry,
The
say what you're gonna
Greens,
say.
So the Greens have likely in the lower house, Albert Park, uh, possibly Footscray, and what's the other one? Yeah, there's potentially two. They're closing in on Pasco Vale. There's a good chance we could see anywhere from 5 to 8 Greens in the new Parliament. Labor does appear to be having trouble holding on to their inner city seats, and I think again this has got to do a lot with corruption. The Greens just out of the three main parties, the Greens have probably been the ones that have least faced corruption scandals, whereas most of the other parties have all had at least some major member of theirs be taken down by IBAC.
look, I also think another part of it as well is like, obviously back to what I said before about inner city Melbourne being a Greens power base, is I think gentrification plays a big role in it as well. Because you look at places like Fitzroy and all of that sort of inner Melbourne, they used to be quite working class, some people would call rough areas, blue collar dominated. And then obviously what's happened to those areas have been redeveloped and gentrified, and a lot of people that
Oh,
are
by the
living
way, they're
there
talking
now
about Albert Park right now. If you're curious,
are actually, like educated professionals, white collar professionals in health, social services, education, and whatnot, paralegals, whatnot, do tend to vote Green because they care more about the social and environmental policies as opposed to the economic policies that Labor tend to focus on. So I do think gentrification in areas where there is has something to do with it as well, and changing the voter base.
do you think the help from the Liberals that the Greens are getting are going to make them a bit more of a right wing party in terms of economically?
That's a
I don't really see that happening.
I'm just
Well,
wondering if
it is an interesting. I have pondered. The Greens could. There was actually a mate of mine that I was chatting about who's a Labor Party member and a unionist and that, and and he was saying like like some elements of the Greens. It could like for example, like the Greens on their social media say how they're against landlords and whatever, but then a lot of the Greens, people who vote for the Greens or who are members of the Greens or who are elected representatives of the Greens, are white collar professionals that can clearly afford to be in the rental market or even have aspirations to own investment properties and whatnot. And
it's 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 the example of it's the difference between like wanting to getting gas cars, getting petrol cars off the road. There's the solutions of getting more trains and trams versus going to electric vehicles. And I'm wondering if the Greens are starting to move away from supporting trains and trams and more to EVs, more to sort of more like the Democrats in the US, sort of like a progressive social party, for LGBT rights, for environmentalism, but very much from a very pro-consumer stance rather than sort of a very worker orientated stance. I'm just wondering if the Greens are going to become more like that if they keep getting these liberal preferences.
I've noticed that. I think that is definitely happening, and you hit the nail on the head there with what it's already starting to happen. Like even like because you have a look, and I think they're doing it because their voter base it isn't people like myself from single parent public housing working class backgrounds. It is those inner city educated professionals who do have the money to consume, who do value what is it eco consumerism, ethical consumption, all of the rest of that. So I think they're doing that slowly, and I've even noticed that in some of their policies, like less emphasis on public housing, and that less emphasis on public transport, moving towards social justice, electric cars, all that, because that's just their voter base, but that educated white collar professionals.
So yeah, Richmond has become a very strongly green seat, it seems, and Northcote for that matter.
North Kit, you keep calling it North
I think
Kit.
you need I think you need to understand that these margins look a bit more extreme, probably because it used to be a Labour versus Liberal, and because it's how the three parties land. Yeah, it can look a bit more crazy than it is. I can't explain it too much now because I'm a bit too tired to explain how it works. But don't don't look at these like huge margins of the Greens and suddenly think, oh wow, clearly there must be massive Green supporters. No, these are like liberal preferences that are just trying to get rid of Labor or their animal justice or other parties. Because the Greens do benefit from the fact that they are still technically a third party. I know in the state election in South Australia, a lot of seats were just Labor, Liberal, Greens, and the Greens got abnormally large votes because they were the only third party. So everyone who just didn't like Labor or Liberal voted Greens, even if they don't necessarily associate with Greens policies.
Yes, that is a fair point. Cause, and of course, compulsory voting plays into it as well because we've all got to go down and get our names marked off, or we'll get a fine in the mail. So that obviously impacts election results as well. Now, just having a look, talking of some election results, we're up to 44 seats for Labor, 12 Liberal, 8 National, 5 Greens, 0 to others, 19.9% counted, 19 in doubt, and that's from 2 minutes ago. So Labor just need one more confirmed, and then they've got this in the bag.
Labor has also picked up the seat of Glen Waverley, which is a bit of a nostalgic seat for me because I used to live on the Glen Waverley line back when I was living in Melbourne in 2001.
Nice.
Interesting. Just for what it's worth, I'm here from Adelaide, South Australia, as is Sormon. Where are you from, Jet Set?
I'm from Victorian, northern Melbourne.
Cool. And what about you, Zero Peaches? Where are you at the moment?
New South Wales. So yeah,
Sydney?
Doom is the only actual Victorian here.
Yeah.
Sorry, viewers.
Which is funny how like the only Victorian is the only person who hates Andrews here. Funny how that works.
Yeah, he's experienced it firsthand. You guys have only known the
Labor is one
stories.
seat from majority according to the computer.
Yeah.
Very boring election. TBH. I was hoping for something a bit spicier.
Yeah, even the independents aren't doing like amazingly. Like I'm just looking at the seat of like Q. Liberals are currently ahead, 52.3 to
There's been no
47.7.
independent gains yet.
Well, it
No.
looks like they'll get Hawthorn. Like they're independent. They're ahead there, and that was like the one I had the most interest in terms
Well,
of an
Hawthorn
independent.
is where Kooyong is. I think Hawthorn's within the seat of Kooyong.
Yeah, it's like 98% of Kooyong is in the Hawthorn seat at the state level.
Yeah, you're right. The independent is ahead in Hawthorn, but
And I guess Mornington's the other one.
Hawkmoon,
Right.
I had a lot of interest in just because that was one Weber won in 2018, and now they're not even involved in the conversation about that seat. Like it's a Whipple Teal contest.
It
Like
was a pretty
Weber's not
famous
even.
upset because the guy who lost it was on the ABC panel when it happened. Because like normally,
Hmm.
normally the ABC panel are all people in very safe seats because if they're not in a safe seat, they'd probably be at an election party because they're obviously fighting for the seat. So he was completely blindsided when he lost his seat. It's actually the guy currently running actually there. What's his name?
John Pasuto, I think that's.
Yeah, John Pacino. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was deputy party leader or something back then.
I actually find the independent results quite interesting because the independents have got 16.6% of the primary vote as of right now, which is a massive 5.4% swing towards them. But they actually haven't won any seats, which is quite unusual because at the federal level, as we just saw, the independents had a massive swing towards them, and they picked up a lot of seats, particularly the Teal independents. But here and also in South Australia as well, at our last election, we had quite a few independents come through and win seats or nearly win seats, and that with a big swing to their primary vote. But here in Victoria, that same massive swing to the independent primary vote has not yet translated into winning a big increase of seats.
Um, can I interrupt? Does anyone know if there's a website doing an election count with a map?
I do not know. Unfortunately.
Yeah, neither do I.
Um,
It'd be
I don't know.
handy to have.
so Mildura
Yeah.
was another seat that an independent had, and it looks like the Nationals are ahead. Um, and I believe there was another seat that the Independents had, but I can't remember which one it is. So unfortunately, but yeah, that looks like Liberal. Yeah, it looks like Independent is at behind in queue. All right, I'll be back in like 10 minutes, so you guys could just chill in the
And we
meantime.
descended to chaos.
Yeah, all right, I'll be
Just make sure it's
I'll be back soon.
G-rated chaos in case there's any kids watching.
I don't think you need to go with
Look,
the doot, and you know, boop.
I've said it. I've already like dropped a few f bombs tonight, like just out of habit. So I think that ship's already sailed.
I think that dude has already set.
It's interesting how that on that topic is how you never know. It always all it takes one person to be watching. But anyway, we're up to 47 with Labor, so they've just crossed the threshold of the 45 seats required to win. So Labor have this one in the bag.
Yep. So they're up to 47 on the website.
Yes.
I just had a look.
Never really in doubt, but like disappointing that it has been like so quick. I was hoping for like a more spicy nail biter just for entertainment.
Well, I'll be interested. It'll be interesting to see if they can crack 50 or if they get like left with only a slim majority.
They've still got 15 seats in doubt, so there's a few more to go around.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the chamber right now. See where Green's thinking it's going to land.
Albert Park is looking at Albert Park is looking at Greens ahead. Bath Liberal likely. Brighton Liberal likely. Broadmeadows is too early to call. Caulfield Labor are ahead. Camborne is too early. Croydon is Liberal ahead. Cray is Greens ahead. Hawthorn's Independent ahead. Kew is Liberal ahead. Cororoet, if I've pronounced that correctly, is too early to call, as is Laverton, Melton, Mornington at Mulgrave. Narracon is deferred because of what happened earlier, and Narrow Warren South is too early to call. Pakenham, Pascoe Vale, Preston, ALP are all ahead in those. Bunbury, Tarniet and Thomastown, Werribee are all too early to call, so there you have it across the board for these seats in doubt according to the ABC electoral website.
Seat of Pascoe Vale's gotten really close between Labour and Greens there. That'll be one to keep an eye on.
Pascoe Vale, did you say?
Yeah.
Where is this seat? Okay, so it's sort of in the mid north, so it's not fully like It's a bit further out of the city than I was expecting for a Greens to be doing so well.
Okay, I gotta be
It's
honest.
actually-
Even though I live here, I always forget where Pasco Vale is. It's sort
Melbourne's
of
a big city.
yeah, no, it's like really once you get like closer to the actual city center, it's just you get lost
I
amongst all the
generally
suburbs.
I generally think what we're seeing right now is what happened in Queensland. It's like when the Liberals preference the Greens above Labor, you just get more Greens. You don't get the Greens don't return the favour because the Greens hate the Liberals.
And that is
No,
very
yeah,
true.
and I think for the Liberals, it's just kind of worth it to screw over Labor. But
By getting someone who's more ideologically opposed to you, okay.
well, the thing is, let's be honest, Labor and Green supporters hate each other, so like anything to cause more like conflict between them, like is at least going to be entertaining, if
But
nothing
it's
else.
silly because I know I know Liberals and the Greens supporters they hate each other. Like I've got friends on both sides, and both Liberal and Greens hate each other, which is very weird to think because the average income of a Liberal voter versus the average income of a Greens voter is actually very similar, and both Liberal voters and Greens voters tend to be both white collar educated professionals. So it's actually really weird like how the Liberals and the Greens just hate each other that much, even though their voter base is quite similar economically.
Just see how the if there's anything in the chat at the moment.
That's been quiet tonight by the looks of things.
But it's not the most interesting contest, so I don't blame not many people.
We got about 6 concurrent viewers at the moment. So actually, wait, one of them is me. So
Well,
One of
come
them's
on, get the numbers up. We'll be competing with Sky News in no time.
One of them's me as well.
meanwhile, the ABC's got 5,603.
What's the most you've ever had, Sormon?
On one of my views, I think I got like 20 on my Xenoblade 3 live stream on my other channel.
Nice.
What's funny is some of the political guys just dropped into the channel. They're just like, I have no interest in this game. I just like listening to your voice. I was like, well, that's nice.
You do have a good podcasting and radio voice, Sormon. I will admit that.
Well, as I say, I've been doing YouTube for almost 4 years. Actually, we're coming up to the 4-year anniversary of me starting my election series on this channel, on my channel. In fact, I'm actually working on my newest video this weekend because I'm not sure if you guys have seen my new series. Okay, I'm going to do some shameless plugging here. I'm doing a new series covering all the electorates in the federal government. So I obviously did my own electorate of Adelaide 2 weeks ago, and this Monday I'm hoping to get my one on Aston, and I basically just go alphabetical order through every electorate all the way down to, I don't know, is it Whitlam or whatever the last seat is in the alphabet.
Another thing I find really cool, Sormon, is how you first got into this, like how you and Zero Peaches met each other. Like I remember you were saying at that party how you literally like just met on a bus of all places, and then you both like found out you had interests in common and stuff, and then like you just started collabing on YouTube and stuff together. I think that's like pretty
well,
cool.
I'd always wanted to collab because that's where you sort of know you're sort of starting to hit it off big when you start collabing with other people. Obviously, I don't really collab with other political channels. Like I've never collabed with like Friendly Geordies doesn't do collabs, I don't think, but like Ozpol explains. What's that other one that does history? I forget the guy's name. He's a bit of a big name. But yeah, I haven't really talked much. Although I have admit I have got mentioned by a few. I know a New Zealand guy started doing all New Zealand elections in Australia in their history, and he didn't shout me out directly, but he said another guy has done one on the Australian elections, referencing obviously myself. So I'm glad that like some people are recognizing the videos I do on that channel. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good. It can be hard to build a following. I know some people that do streaming of games on Twitch and stuff, and they say it's one of the hardest parts is just getting a viewer base and a subscriber base going. And then once you've got that going, then it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then you can start looking at monetizing your streams and sponsorship and all the rest of that exciting stuff.
One of the biggest issues has to be just talking non-stop. Like I'm so glad that Eli was able to bring Duma in today, because just having four of us here, it's just meant that like when one of us doesn't have anything to say, there's at least three other people that have something to say. And
I mean,
like,
look, I've been necking vodka tonight, so I'm probably not the best person to have in here, but I
oh no,
appreciate the sentiment nonetheless.
you've been fine. Like just the more people the merrier, because it allows more people to bounce off. It allows us to keep talking. It allows us to give different sets of opinions. Like if this was just me, this stream would be a lot more boring.
Mm.
Yes, because that's a very important point you raised, Sormon. Because I remember a friend of mine telling me who has done some stuff on community radio. He did a introduction to some course, introduction to radio broadcasting, and he said pretty much the golden thing is that dead air is bad air, and that there should be no dead air, and that there should always be at least either some music playing or some advertising or somebody talking or just something filling the airwaves, and that's often like very hard for new radio presenters anyway to get right, is actually making sure there's no dead air, because when people turn the radio on, you don't want to hear dead air.
I'm just trying to check at the moment. I don't think they call the majority yet. I think they have, but
46 now because there's 16 in doubt, so the computer must have changed its mind about one of the ALP seats because there's one now in
yeah,
doubt.
they've gone backwards.
I cannot wait to see the comment sections of the right-wing newspapers like the Advertiser and what's the other one?
The advertiser's all right. It will mostly be Sky After Dark where
Hello.
you'll get the oh my god, the socialists are winning and destroying everything. It's those, like I watched I can't remember which guy it was. I really could care less. Get like super angry and Albanese one.
Hello, LE Flag Girl. Welcome to the chat.
Oh, we got new viewers, have we?
Yes. So
Hello,
basically,
Ellie.
all of the like media against Daniel Andrews in the past 4 years has basically meant nothing. It seems.
I personally think that's a big indictment on the intelligence of my fellow Victorians, but that's an argument for another time.
Oh.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, I disagree because I think a reality is, and if anyone's done any philosophy at uni, they'll learn that. I know the left like to say the right is stupid, and the right like to say the left is stupid, and vice versa. But for the vast majority of the time, people are intelligent, unless they are little kids or people with intellectual impairments. Most people are pretty intelligent, and most people know how to vote in the government that best serves their interests.
sorry, did you say little people with little kids are stupid?
No, I was sorry.
Oh, I just had a baby. I lost 20 IQ.
I was getting it. I was saying that subject from philosophy that most adults are intelligent unless they are little kids. Most human beings are intelligent unless they're little kids or people with intellectual disabilities.
I would say if you spent a few years living in Victoria, you might rethink that statement. We're not the smartest bunch in general, and that goes for both sides of the political aisle in this wacky
I
state.
ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
He was looking kind of dumb.
Oh, what's happened to this
There's a
podcast?
reason why we don't let 5-year-olds drive cars or let 10-year-olds run for parliament.
Don't worry, I saw my brother at driving school at Legoland constantly crash the car into the wall. I was gonna say what was like one of the big things, going back to the media on a serious topic. I'm someone who watches a bunch of US political channels, and one of the big ones is Breaking Points, which is one of my favorite ones and a big one I recommend to a lot of people. And their big thing is anti-mainstream media, and they've basically said they hate the mainstream media because it's a big divisive force that tries to sort of almost brainwash you into thinking a certain way, both like the Fox Newses and the CNNs and MSNBCs. And so their big thing is trying to bring unity to the liberals and conservatives in America by, having both a liberal and a conservative host frequently talk about what their side's doing wrong and how they can meet halfway. Which is why I'm interested to see the decline of something like News Corp, because I do generally believe News Corp, especially their politics section, is just a massive machine to generate outrage from their audience. It's not productive to a future Australia. So I'm in some respects happy to see News Corp's power to swing elections is on the decline, because I'm hoping this means we're going to become a more united population who is not influenced by the powers of mainstream media.
Yeah, I'll just respond to that. There's quite a few interesting things you actually just said there. I think one thing that's worth mentioning is it's pretty obvious that the reason why the media sows fear and division is because it sells papers or sells TV advertisements. It sells clicks. Like people thrive off fear and division, and both sides do it, the right wing media and the left wing media, because that's just what generates fear and division. And that's why I remember I was having an interesting chat with somebody about, the ABC, and for all the flaws of the ABC, but it has, I find it can be a little bit woke, for lack of a better word sometimes. It can be a bit Sydney-centric as well, and city-centric just in general. But at least the ABC, it doesn't have to answer to corporate shareholders and make profits or answer to investors.
Interestingly, Mulgrave has not been called for Labor despite Andrews being quite comfortably ahead.
Yeah, it's weird.
I think that's just to get a few clickbaity headlines out there.
Yeah, there's a conspiracy.
I don't think there's any doubt that Andrews is going to lose his seat.
I also think Sunbury and Wirrabee have yet to be called, but both are very safe Labor seats, and I think they'll be retained by the party.
Labor's going to win 50 something seats, it seems.
Which would be a decline of how much?
5, I think.
So it currently says they've lost 1 seat in total.
I don't know why they're focusing so much on Brighton. I guess because it's not really confirmed for a particular party.
Oh, so there's an independent challenging. You could go anywhere with preferences.
Right.
So what's happening with Felicity Fred Durcio is it's possible that she could do a ladder climb where basically all the other independents throw votes to her. She then overtakes the Greens throw votes to her. She overtakes the Labor throws votes to her, and she overtakes the Liberals. It is kind of insane to win from 4th place, but it is potentially possible.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever happened before, actually. I've read somewhere we've had heaps of come from behind 2nd place. We've had a few come from behind 3rd places, but it almost did happen in South Australia at the last state election. I think it's more in one of the seats, in a southern seats, and Anthony Green said had it happened, it would have been the first time in Australian history that someone had come from...
That a 4th place candidate won?
Yeah, they didn't win, but they nearly did in South Australia. Rare that it's never happened before, a 4th place candidate winning in Australia.
Let's have a look at Q. The independents just really aren't doing as well as I think they're expecting. This is clearly no federal election wipeout for the Liberals by independents. I think in part because the Liberals aren't government here in WA, in Victoria. So I just don't think the anger is there to throw them out like there was for the federal Liberals.
I also think part of it as well is that it's also different issues as well. Like a federal election was fought over federal issues, the cost of living and whatnot, and then a state election's being fought over state issues, whatever they are over in Victoria. Seems to be infrastructure, seems to be quite dominant over there, and then for the fringe voters, management of the pandemic.
If you're voting for climate change, what exactly in the Labor policy is angering you? For these sort of inner city Liberals who are voting for Climate 200 candidates, it's not as if Labor's massively pro coal and gas like the coalition are. So I don't really see why people would be keen to vote independent here, which I think it's me just theorising why I think the independents aren't doing as well as we expected.
Yeah, I think that's something to it as well. The Labor climate policy, for a lot of people, I think it's quite reasonable. They're trying to strike a balance between, you've got your inner city left green people that want to go 100% renewables by 2025, and then you've got at the other end your country people some people who just don't care, or they're worried about losing jobs in coal mining towns and towns where fossil fuels are quite an important part of their local economies. I think Labor's trying to, their climate policy is quite reasonable, trying to strike a balance between the two extreme sides of the climate debate. So I don't think there's anything for the vast majority of people to be super angry at with Labor in terms of climate policy.
Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a look at the Legislative Council now because some interesting stuff is happening there. So we have in Eastern Victoria, legalized cannabis have entered the pack. They are in the top 5, looking to possibly get elected. And I'm possibly about to win $30. Yay!
No double ups. Only one party each. Wow.
Yep. That's what's going on in Eastern Victoria. As for Northeastern Metropolitan, it's a very boring result. Just Labor, Greens, and the Liberals. Northern Metropolitan region, we don't have actually any results for there yet. That's the one that Fiona Patten is looking to get re-elected. Northern Victoria, Animal Justice and the Shooters. Southeastern Metropolitan, we don't have anything there at the moment. Southern Metropolitan, we don't have anything there at the moment. Western Metropolitan, nothing there at the moment. And Western Victoria, we have legalized cannabis again, and Darren Hinch's Justice Party. I really should have put more money on legalized cannabis. Holy shit. They're getting like
They only got
4%.
it's only 2%, and I think a lot of the big Labor areas haven't reported. Like, have you ever been scrutineering before?
I have not done scrutineering, no.
So the thing with scrutineering, they count the lower house votes first, and they only do the legislative council votes after that. And the legislative council votes take ages to count, so you're only getting the smallest of small boosts getting the results. So yeah, don't expect big results yet.
And while I actually haven't done any scrutineering, I did read an interesting story on Reddit some time ago about how there was somebody who was doing scrutineering at one of the, I don't know, one of the state or federal elections, and they said how, like, 6 o'clock, the last people who are in the line get let into the polling booth, they vote, then pizzas are delivered, the polling officials will buff up for pizzas because you've been working all day. 6:30 they start counting votes. They do the lower house first because that's where the government's formed. And then the scrutineers will hang around for that. And then most scrutineers, after the lower house votes been counted, they'll either go home or they'll go on to the after party. And then they'll do a very brief count of the upper house, like just for a general gist after the lower house has been counted. By then, everybody's usually pretty knackered and just wants to go home, because if you've been working on a polling booth, chances are you've been there since like 6 a.m. setting up, and it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and you just want to go home and crash. And I did read an interesting story about somebody who was actually doing scrutiny, who was working on a polling booth, and there was a scrutineer who'd been sent down by one of the major parties, and he had been specifically told to watch both the lower house count and the upper house count, and insist that polling booth, the upper house count, be completed that night. And that scrutineer was a very weird and annoying person, and pretty much everyone at the polling booth silently agreed that he had been sent down there to keep him away from the after party so that he would not piss everybody off. But the polling booth people were not happy because they had to stay back to like midnight counting the upper house votes in that election, because that's what that scrutineer had wanted. That's what he'd been told to by his party to do, is to stay there to both lower and upper house had been counted. There you have an interesting story about why an easy way to keep an unwanted person away from your political party's post-election party, because it is very hard to ban or remove people from political parties, unlike it is for other community groups.
I'm just going to quickly interrupt and say Anthony Green has called a Labor majority government. Just a heads up.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not
we're at-
surprised. Like, they already had like 49 seats or something on the Labor Party's turf, so yeah.
49 right now, yes.
Just want to jump in to answer a question that was asked in chat earlier. Someone was asking who owns the motorways in Melbourne. It's owned in a partnership between private companies and the Vic Wodes, which is the government road body over here. To answer that question.
which is unlike Adelaide, where we don't really have any toll roads because nobody in Adelaide likes toll roads.
Yeah, fuck toll roads. All right. I think we don't like. I don't know why we would go too much longer on this stream because
So we've been going about 2 hours
yeah,
as of now.
it's like just hit 9 p.m. Um, we know that Labor has got a majority. The upper house is not going to be decided for quite some time. They're only on like 2% counted, so there's no point sticking around for that. And we know
So
there's going to be a
we
couple
know the
more.
results if you did want to call it now.
Yeah, it's a Labor majority. Nothing really surprising. Um, they did a bit better than I think most people expected they would. At least more than a bit more than I expected they would. I think my prediction was Labor on like 47 or 48 or something.
Well, I think it's my prediction was Labor holding all this, like holding the same number of seats. So I don't think I'm going to be quite right either.
Right.
My
Okay.
prediction, my prediction before I went into this was that Labor would return a majority government, but it would be a reduced majority, and
Yeah.
I think that's looking pretty likely.
Yeah.
My final read of the board, with 28.6% counted from 4 minutes ago, with 12 in doubt, is ALP on 49, Liberal on 12, National on 9, Greens on 5, and Independents have actually got 1 seat as of right now. I've just checked.
Yeah.
My prediction was Victoria is a shithole, and I think that prediction has proven accurate.
That's your opinion.
Yeah. Like it doesn't seem like people are really that pissed off about the lockdowns or really anything going on. No African gang scare or anything going on this
Also,
time.
not super good for independence. Even though they did win Mornington, they like to win Hawthorn. They also lost Mildura and Shepparton. So independents are going to basically, we're going to see the same number of independents, but they're going to be completely new faces.
I reckon part of that's just the electoral system because the primary vote of the independents in Victoria is up quite a bit, but it hasn't translated into seats. And as we know,
Too widespread.
it's just too widespread, and that's just part and parcel of compulsory preferential voting in single-member electoral districts. That as we know, that system can produce all kinds of weird and wonderful results, sometimes skewed either way, depending on the way the votes are spread and how preferences are distributed among the candidates.
All right. I think we could pretty much end the stream. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everyone for showing up. And yeah, thanks for all the guests who came in and chatted. I think it's been a pretty lively stream. In terms of the commentary, and yeah, and I think what's the next election coming up? It's the New
I guess
South
I'll see you
Wales.
guys for the New South Wales election.
Yeah, that will definitely be a big
Will
one.
you be live streaming that one?
I mean, I guess so. I don't think I'm going to be really campaigning or anything. I don't really care that much about it. So yeah, I guess probably live stream that one as well.
Not ending ending a decade of Liberal rule there.
I don't know. Like, I'm not that excited for
strap
Chris
on the red-
Minns, So
On Eli, whack on a red shirt, go out there and hand out some Labor how to vote cards on polling day.
I
Just
don't
what
know.
like what
I
did
don't know.
at the
I'm
last
not.
state
I'm not.
election.
I'm not that much of a Chris Minns simp. So I'm not sure if I'll do that. But we'll see. We'll see. All right.
All right.
And just my apologies for joining about 5-10 minutes late, as I did sleep into about 5:15.
No, it's
so
okay.
it
Like
didn't break.
I literally woke up late and then I started the stream about half an hour late, so it's perfectly
Yeah,
fine.
I was the only one here that was on time, but
Yep.
that's all right.
Yep. Sormon was on time. He was.
But I guess I'll just quickly do my little channel plug.
Go ahead,
Before
yeah,
I run off. So if you guys want to see more of me, feel free to check out my channel Sormon, Sormon. I basically covered the history of all the elections in Australian history, and I'm now doing a new series on every electorate in Australia. So if you want to see more of that, check me out on Sormon, and I guess I'll see the rest of you guys all later. Toodles. Hey guys, so I'm
Thank you.
quite interested in
Bye.
politics.
Have a nice night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.